Okay, this video is about man's way versus God's ways. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna give you some preliminary metaphors. The idea of like a map when you go to a tourist place and it says you are here. And basically, hopefully, you get your act together by middle age and you go down the low fat vegan path and you'll be pretty healthy, probably die around 90. Typical chump just keeps on eating the sad diet, maybe goes to the vegan diet, which is a little bit better, but not much. Meat, oil, processed food, drug. They don't work, over surgery, chop, 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 bye bye money, dead prematurely, etc. Okay. Now, it's also pretty obvious, if you just look at the comparison of the different diets. With the SAD diet, you're pretty much screwed. You're going to be fat, sick, and stupid by 55 or 60, if not sooner. With the East Asian white rice diet, you can actually be very healthy. The main thing that got them in trouble wasn't their diet. It was the fact that they were smoking a lot, and then they would add so much salt, other than the sodium, excessive sodium. That's like Japan, Korea, China. The Southeast Asian diet, like people from India, the main thing that gets them in trouble is too much fried food. A little bit also from the yogurt and whatnot, but that's the big thing, is too much fried food. Whereas a low-fat vegan diet, it's better for everything. It makes you skinny, prevents diabetes, prevents obesity, prevents hypertension, prevents myocardial infarction, dramatically lowers your risk of stroke, cancer, impotence, all that stuff. It dramatically improves it. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to do that? You're winning the jackpot, the lottery. It's obvious this is true. The reason why people hear contradictory information on the internet is there'd be billion-dollar changes in the economy if the pros actually, figured this out. But they never will, because they don't usually make much effort to learn, and they just flood the internet with contradictory information that confuses the pros. Okay, so I'm continuing with this metaphor. Your body is like a Rolls-Royce car, a magnificent thing that has to last you your whole life, hopefully about 90 years. So the smart move is obviously, put the premium gas into it, whatever the owner's manual says. And so to eat, sad diet and have bad habits, that's like putting, regular gas into your premium car. It's stupid. Okay, so you have to figure out what it is. I'll tell you, it's low-fat vegan. You can look that up for yourself. I also thought about the metaphor of, the last straw that broke the camel's back. You pile all this stuff on the camel's back, and eventually it just collapses and gets irreversible damage. But that sort of implies a one-time event, and it's not really a one-time event. It's a whole bunch of small events. I had the metaphor of the Super Mario Brothers, or any video game, where they do the good stuff and they get green energy points. They do the bad stuff and they get the red loss of energy points that weakens them. Okay, and life is a little bit like a video game. You navigate it. Okay, so then here's the metaphor that I came up with, and I was thinking about it, is that there's man's way over here and there's God's way over here. So man's way ends up getting you exposed to lots and lots of toxic stuff. EDCs is endocrine disrupting chemicals, usually means estrogen disrupting chemicals. And actually, a scientist named Gil Serlini showed that 80% of them at least, of these estrogenic chemicals, are also neurotoxic in some way. And the other 20% that weren't neurotoxic were indirectly neurotoxic because they were goitrogenic, were bad for the thyroid. Okay, EMF plays a role. We talk about all this stuff, the oils in the diet, excessive dietary fat, like from animal foods, sat fat, for example, heavy metal toxicities, halogen toxicities, F minus, POFA, nonstick cookware, and then we talked about excessive dietary sodium and chloride in the water, and F minus in the water, and AL in the water. Okay, but then, the stress, caffeine, sleep deprivation, corticosteroid medications are essentially stress equivalents. All these excitotoxins, overstimulators, things like aspartame, glyphosate, GP, psych meds, MSG, MFG, mitochondria and SERCA inhibitors do something similar. So anyways, these things are ubiquitous. It's very common. The average person I'll see will be exposed to, 15 or 20 of them simultaneously. All the mold inhibitors, that's in all the processed food. They don't want it to spoil or get mold on it. It would be returned to the maker. They lose money. And lots of common medicines have mitochondria inhibition effects. A lot of the SSRIs, serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors for treatment of depression, all psych drugs gradually or quickly cause lobotomy. They're all stupid. Alcohol drinking, tobacco, MJ, vaping, a lot of antibiotics, fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, beta-lactams. Atrazine is also a mitochondrial inhibitor in addition to being an estrogenic chemical. Okay, common medicines like metformin, statins, Tylenol, and other ones. I think propofol's in there, etc. Okay, a lot of pesticides, herbicides, cleaning chemicals, trichloroethylene, chem, you know what, up in the air, the trails, factory air pollution and whatnot, car exhaust pollution. Anyways, so these are all the things people are exposed. I'm going to show you God's way in a moment, but let me just kind of show you what I see happening on a daily basis. Is people just start fading out, Everybody sort of loses a step, between their 30s and their late 40s, but they can compensate for that pretty well. However, what I tend to see is when people hit late 40s, early 50s, they very often are no longer compensating so well, and they're starting to fade out. And that's the big thing about getting older is you get more fragile. So the smart move is, as you get more fragile, to keep on learning about health, diet, and good habits and optimizing them, and you can maintain a very high level of fitness and good looks if you do that. But what I usually see is that people just keep fading out, and they hit a turning point where they no longer can turn it around. They just had irreversible damage, or they're just too lazy and stupid and incurious, or they don't have any energy. And so I sort of have sort of like a transparent white haze over the person as they're starting to fade out. Okay, and then here's the next step. Now they're fading out a little more, and man, they really should get their act together at the previous slide, because the farther they get like this, and I see tons of people like this all day, every day, it's becoming inevitable that they're not going to get better. And then here's the next picture of the same thing. They're just fading out more and more, and pretty soon they're gomed. Gomed means, hopelessly demented, where there's just no hope of them turning around at all. So anyways, like that, what is God's way? The nice thing about God's way of healing is it's easy. All of these things, you could avoid them. You can't completely avoid EMF, but all the other ones, you could avoid them. And you can't completely avoid some things, but you can avoid most of these completely, and all of them to a large extent, to some extent. God's way, it's free and it works the best. You eat your plant foods, you get your dietary fiber, you get your starch, you get your antioxidants, you get your potassium, your magnesium, your nitrates as precursors of nitric oxide. They're in the context of antioxidants, so they're the good nitrates, okay? You just remember the basic social stuff. What's going to bring your happiness? Your family, your friends, conversation and laughter, social support, love. The family's cooperation. The outside world is a lot of competition, and you can try to make it as cooperative as possible. Christianity is great for that. Religion, people who are religious, any of the major religions, I think Christianity is the best one, but any of the major religions, people are much healthier. Harold Cohen did extensive research on that. He's a doctor who studied the effect of religion on health, wrote a couple books about it. Just having a sense of purpose. If you have a sense of purpose, it just energizes you to wake up in the morning and to organize your efforts towards a good, productive goal. Makes you happier, makes you more resilient, makes you more successful. Okay, and then the other lifestyle habits: get your sleep. Try to get at least 7 hours if you can. Sunshine is good for us in multiple ways. Get your exercise. Enjoy nature to the extent you can in the modern world. And then other habits that just build you up: reading, listening to good music, looking at good art, or watching a good movie where there's a story, or there's something meaningful and useful and good. So anyways, that's kind of the point. You don't have to be rich. Lots of relatively poor people, and frankly poor people, are very healthy. I mean, you need a little bit of money to live in an American city, of course, to get a house, to get an apartment or something, but almost all this other stuff, it's free. Just pay attention. You have to buy food anyway, so you might as well buy the stuff that makes you healthy: low fat, low sodium, vegan diet with no oil, 100% organic, whole food, single ingredient only. Okay, and that's it. So hope that was helpful.